The talks between the US and Iran have officially collapsed. The official story is simple. It was all about the nuclear program. And sure, that's true, but it's only the surface. Point number one. The US demanded the total dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. Literally, taking it apart down to the last bolt. Iran was willing to limit uranium enrichment, but giving it up entirely? Never. Why? Because that nuclear program isn't just about weapons. It's a political symbol of national sovereignty. Point number two, money. Iran wanted an immediate unfreezing of assets, $6 billion. The US said, concessions first, money later. Iran said, money first, then we'll talk. Point number three, control over the Strait of Hormuz. The headlines are screaming, this is a failure. But while most people are trying to figure out what went wrong, 4 world capitals are popping champagne. Today, I'm going to prove to you that peace between Iran and the US was actually bad for business for every major player involved. We're going to break down how Russia cashed in, why China is thrilled, and the terrifying price Europe will pay for this failure. Stick around until the end, and you'll see why it's actually more profitable for Iran to stay under sanctions than to leave them. Washington's hidden win. Let's start with Washington. On paper, it looks like the US lost. They failed to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions. But here's the first twist. The US gets to keep Iran on a leash, without signing a single piece of paper. Without an Iranian threat, the US loses its leverage in the Middle East. Why would Saudi Arabia keep buying hundreds of billions of dollars in American weapons if Iran is no longer the enemy? The failure of these talks is the perfect excuse to keep the US Navy in the Persian Gulf. No deal means no weak leader optics at home. Hardline foreign policy isn't just about diplomacy, it's a domestic signal. Politicians need to look tough, especially during an election year. The key takeaway? Sometimes, walking away from the table is more profitable than making a deal. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real US victory is hidden in the energy sector, and we'll get to that in a minute. The sanction economy. Now for the shocking part. You think Iran is suffering under sanctions? The people are, sure. But what about the people in power? Sanctions have created a unique shadow economy in Iran. When there's no legal import, everything, from iPhones to missile parts, goes through a tiny elite inner circle. For Iranian hardliners, lifting sanctions is a nightmare. It would mean letting in Western capital, Western culture, and, worst of all, transparency. The collapse of these talks allows Iran to remain a threshold state. They don't have a bomb yet, but they could build one in 2 weeks. It's the perfect status quo for blackmail. Moscow and the oil factor. Now, let's look at Moscow. For Russia, peace between Tehran and Washington would have been a geopolitical knockout blow. If sanctions were lifted, the global market would be flooded with cheap Iranian oil and gas. That would be a direct hit to the Kremlin's wallet. Instead, the failed deal turned Iran into a brother in arms. They aren't competitors anymore. They're a strategic military hub. Iranian tech, drones, and their expertise in bypassing sanctions have become a goldmine for Russia. But even Russia isn't the biggest winner here. There's a silent giant in the room taking everything for pennies on the dollar. The China strategy. China is playing a game the West doesn't seem to understand. While the US and Iran argue over contract clauses, Beijing is just writing checks and expanding its influence without firing a single shot. And this might be the most dangerous strategy of all. Do you know what China pays for Iranian oil? They get a massive discount because Iran is isolated and has nowhere else to go. China gets cheap energy and pays for it in yuan and technology, not dollars. Effectively, Iran is becoming an economic protectorate of Beijing. This failure ensures Iran will never pivot back toward Europe. The bottom line. Let's be real. In this game, the politicians won, but global security lost. We are one step away from a major war in the Middle East. When diplomacy fails, the only argument left is force. Europe is left without Iranian gas, facing sky-high energy prices and the threat of a new migrant crisis. So, let's recap. Who actually won? The U.S. kept control over its allies and the arms market. The Iranian elite kept their monopoly on power and shadow profits. Russia gained a strategic ally and kept oil prices high. China got a free gas station for its economy. The failure of these negotiations wasn't a fluke. It's the design of a new world order. We're taught to think politicians want peace, but peace is cheap. Chaos is worth trillions. If you're short on time but want to understand the world on a deeper level, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Do you think Iran will actually build a nuclear bomb by 2026, or is this just a never-ending soap opera? Give this video a like if you see the chessboard a little differently now. Thanks for watching. This is where we look past the headlines.